granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Hello. So the inquest recently closed on Peter Lynch, and they decided that it was suicide. We'll get to that in a little while, but if you notice how the BBC put this, hotel riot inmate's death was suicide. That's him, hotel riot inmate, not Peter Lynch, not 61-year-old grandfather, no, not a frightened man caught in the maw of a monster that he had never previously even thought existed. No, hotel riot inmate's death. And his crime was standing at the side of the riot holding a placard. I'll get to that in a minute as well. A man who was found dead in prison 2 months after being jailed for his part in disorder outside an asylum seeker hotel took his own life, an inquest jury has found. Peter Lynch died at HMP Moorland in South Yorkshire on the 19th of October last year after being sentenced to 2 years and 8 months for his role in the riot at the Holiday Inn Express in Manvers, Rotherham in August 2024. I just want to point out that he was there because the Holiday Inn Express was at the time filled with illegal migrants, the provenance of which nobody knew and nobody still knows. Now, you know, he wasn't bullying tourists in Rotherham. Sorry, Rotherham. So let's get to what was going on. The jury at the inquest found that Peter Lynch had committed suicide after he was reported by at least one of his prison guards. This wasn't to do with the sentence he'd got. It was to do with the fact that he'd made a comment to at least one of the guards. I think he had 2 of them with him, but one of them reported him for saying, this is what he remarked to one of the guards. He said that the migrants about whom he'd been demonstrating outside the Holiday Inn Express, he said they were all rapists and paedophiles and should not have been allowed into the country. He did not believe that what he'd said was racist. He was of the opinion that he was simply stating the facts as they were. But at least one of the guards reported him to the authorities, one of the prison officers, who it seems must have taken great pleasure in convincing himself that this man was being racist. So it's not bad enough that he was thrown into jail for nearly 3 years for holding a placard. No, he had to say he was racist as well. And I'm quite sure he did that because that made the prison guard feel a bit better about shoving around a sick old man. He had multiple health issues. And this prison guard wanted to make himself feel a bit better for reporting this man as a racist when all he'd done was hold a placard, because that made it better somehow. It was taken for granted that making a racist comment, whether it was actually racist or not, was just about the worst thing anyone could do. Apparently, such looseness of tongue is far worse than knifing little girls to death in a nursery class. Of course. And I'm pretty sure that Mr. Lynch was worried that this report would get him a lengthening of the sentence he was already looking ahead to serving. And this had become completely insupportable for him. So this was probably the trigger that caused him to put an end to his own life. That prison guard has a lot to be responsible for. I Can't begin to describe to you how I feel every time Peter Lynch's name comes up in the news. He was probably not a very bright man, but he was, so far as I've been able to make out, an ordinary man, a man honest to himself and to the world, a man who wouldn't lie about himself to get a job, for instance. A man who just speaks what he thinks, a family man with grandchildren and, as far as I know, no criminal history. And he'd been thrown into jail for 3 years for holding a placard in front of a police cordon. And I did read somewhere that he also shouted at a police dog. Can't have that, can we? In 2023, that is a year before Peter Lynch fell foul of the law, an inveterate liar and fantasist got a professorship at Cambridge on the strength of his opinions that, and these are what he's written down, I'm talking about Jason Arday, by the way, just in case you didn't catch that. This is what he wrote, that whiteness, white culture, and white-dominated institutions are exclusionary, privileged, oppressive, and in need of dismantling. But for having somewhat similar opinions about the detrimental effects of illegal migrants, Peter Lynch was shoved into the meat grinder of a merciless system. I mean, he should never have even been near a prison, but he was sent there, I have no doubt at all, at the behest or the heavy hinting or influence of Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, who both published spoken or written communications which condemned as guilty of the most heinous crimes all those shocked and outraged Southport residents who were raising a cry of anguish at the devastation that had struck their community. A devastation which at the time they thought was entirely avoidable for one reason. They thought that an illegal migrant was responsible, and which turned out certainly to be entirely avoidable, if for a slightly different reason. That is, the perpetrator was the son of somewhat dodgy immigrants. It's a bit difficult to go into all of that, but there was definitely something seriously wrong with the whole family. And Starmer and Cooper, as I said, libelled all of them with false accusations, right-wing thugs. And they published guilty verdicts and threats of draconian retribution even before any of Peter Lynch's fellow sacrifices had even gone to trial. It was a disgraceful episode in British history. I mean, it really was a historical event. Now, for a long time, I thought that perhaps Mr. Lynch had been murdered. After all, this is not unknown in British prisons, especially when people are accused of not liking Muslims. And of course, that still is a possibility. But thinking about it, I do now consider it more likely. What happened was that Peter Lynch had found himself under the tank tracks of a cold, heartless and monstrous regime of technocrats, which he didn't even recognise as part of his own country or his construct of himself as a free Englishman. In this context, I can't get out of my head the images of Gerald Scarfe's artwork for Pink Floyd's film The Wall. Those tanks rolling over the landscape. That's exactly how I feel. They were practically predictive. And Lynch found himself at the mercy of an automaton which had no more human concern for people like him than an armoured war machine grinding its way over a cradle in the ruins of a nursery. And his last protection, the judge presiding over his case, Judge Jeremy Richardson, KC, by the way, I won't forget his name either, Judge Jeremy Richardson, whose job was supposed to be to uphold the law and make reasonable interpretations of what constituted a breach of that law and the appropriate penalty. This last protection, Judge Jeremy, turned out not to be the protective shield of the law at all, but instead showed himself as the bloodiest fangs of the very ruthless monster into whose jaws Peter Lynch had already been thrown. And they just chewed him up. In a situation like that, I could understand Mr. Lynch might indeed find life not worth the effort of living. And every time I see that poor, frightened face, I curse Starmer and Judge Jeremy and Yvette Cooper and the whole damn lot of the Labour cabinet. I hope they see his face when they try to get to sleep at night, but I very much doubt that they do. And the sooner we get rid of the lot of them, even though they do have a new head, a new face leading them, the sooner we get rid of the lot of them, the cleaner I will feel. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.